After building computers for a while, you start to gather up these old hard drives. Maybe they're broken, old, or just too small to be used. They're actually really cool once you open them up. They have really shiny platters and they have lots of cool mechanical parts. So today, I'm going to show you how to frame these, take them apart, and then show them off as cool little modern art pieces. First thing you're going to want to do is get some old hard drives. I have two 3.5-inch hard drives here and one 2.5-inch. And then we're going to want to take them apart. Alright, that's all the screws around the edge. Now you can see there's two warranty seals. Chances are there's screws under those, otherwise they wouldn't be there. Alright, all the screws have been taken out, so we should be able to crack this thing open. In theory. There we go. She's a little flathead screwdriver. Pry it open. Just be careful not to scratch the inside, because that's what's gonna give it the cool look. Maybe still have another screw here somewhere. It's not wanting to budge. Oh, there we go. And we're in. So you can see the inside of this thing. You can see the two platters, one on top of each other, and the reed disc, and the big magnet in the middle. They're quite impressive little things. They're like mirror finishes. So this one doesn't have a very obvious warranty void seal, so what you want to do is just take your screwdriver and rub it across the label, and then eventually you'll hit something. There, I hit it there. So the screws have to be indented in, and just peel that back, hit, and there's your final tamper-proof screw. Just crack the seal on this guy. Boom, we're in. Same deal. This one only has one platter disc. It has a nice little reed arm. You can see in there. They're really cool. Put that over. And time for our little tiny 2.5-inch drive. This one doesn't have a very obvious warranty seal, so we're just going to use the little screwdriver method. Also just use your fingernail, try to feel where the screw is. This one may not even have a warranty seal. I think it has to. Maybe we have to get this one screw on the bottom. So we have it open. Maybe, yep. There we go. I don't know if that screw is necessary or not. Not entirely sure. It seems to be stuck on something here. Let's try and peel back this label. Does not appear to be a screw there. These are really strong labels. Turns out there was just a little tiny screw I missed putting this thing on. Boom, and we're in. So now we're going to want to measure the outside of our drives. In theory, they should be 3.5 inches and 2.5 inches, depending on the sizes that you chose. But we just want to double check. So now we're going to want to design and build some cases to put these guys in so the platters don't get all dusty and they look cool to show off. So I started to trim down a scrap 2x4 to start making the case, at which point I realized the blade on my table saw was worn out because it was emitting quite a bit of smoke. But after I replaced the blade and got that all sorted out, it was just straightforward. Cut off some strips to make the frame. And then I cut off the edges at 45 degrees to make the corners. And then I cut out some acrylic windows. I just used a Dremel to cut out the acrylic. You can use whatever tool you have access to. Dremel was the easiest for me. And then I cut the groove in the sides of the cases to fit the acrylic windows into place. Because I used a Dremel to cut out the acrylic, I have to sand down the edges quite a bit to match the size of the cases. After everything's been cut out, I just need to glue everything together. Just using wood glue here. I'm gluing the windows of the case into the case themselves, so those won't be removable after, but I figured that was the easiest way to do it. Clamping these was quite difficult. I didn't have the right clamps, and with 45-degree angles, they like to slide around a lot and not really cooperate. So this first one here was quite difficult to clamp and didn't really work out all that well, but I did manage to get it clamped. The second and the third one, I figured out to use some square clamps, right angle clamps I had lying around, and those made it quite a bit easier. The dimensions of the case for the small hard drive weren't quite right. It was a little bit too small, so I'm using a Dremel with a barrel sander bit just to widen up the opening a bit so it fits in. Now I'm just sanding down the edges, cleaning up any excess glue, just making them look nice. Now I'm just taping off the acrylic windows. The acrylic I had laying around was already pretty scratched up, but I figured I didn't want to get any stain on it. I didn't want to scratch it up more than it already was, so I just taped off the windows here to make clean up a little bit easier. Now I'm just going to apply the first coat of stain After that, just sand it down, apply the second, just using stain I had laying around, some black colored stain. So here are the final versions of the case, all stained up with the windows installed and everything, as you can see. Now all we have to do is install the hard drives into them, and then we can mount them on the wall, or whatever you wish to mount them. So the first step in mounting them is going to be to put them into the cases. So I'm just going to take the hot glue gun and hot glue around the edges. There probably is a much more secure way and better way to fasten the hard drives into the cases, but these aren't really going to be moved around much. They're just going to hang on a wall, so hot glue should just be enough to keep them in there and keep them from wiggling around. Here's the final product hanging on the wall. Looks pretty cool. It's a fun way to use up some extra hardware that you have laying around, and it creates some nice looking art, I guess, really, sort of. But it's just something fun to play around with and a nice decor for your office or your garage or wherever you want to put them.